and I'm a startup grant director for Durban University of Technology. And so the purpose of startup grind is just to share or to educate entrepreneurs, innovators, business leaders around share information. So what happens is you find that like as entrepreneurs we are facing different problems, and I might face a certain problem, and let me say sales problem long time ago, and I know how to solve the problem of sales, and you might be struggling with sales. So what we do in Startup Grind, we usually invite people to come with business leaders and innovators with a very rich experience to start to share their experience around running business or certain initiatives. So today we have Mr. Bhengu, who is a very innovator, he's a socialist, he's a jack of all trades as this one. He innovates the township is more a social person, not a capitalist. He's a more of the person who's a social entrepreneur who is passionate around while you're making money, you make sure that the community are uplifted.
Yeah.
So I will give Mr. Vusi an opportunity to introduce. So as today we are going to talk around how can we start to the township can start to use their assets to survive the what we call COVID, beyond COVID, because township they have been informal even before COVID. We have been facing so much difficult problems, and we've been surviving them. So COVID is one of those, and we have so much talent in the township that we can solve. So Mr. Vusi will take us through awakening us of what is actually happening in the township, so that if you are an opportunist, you can start to capture it, you can start to participate in the township and capture that kind of opportunity. So Mr. Vusi, we would like first to introduce yourself, tell us about your background. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Fanie. I think you have sort of introduced me extensively, but I can add a little bit of meat into the structure that we have provided. As you have said, I'm a social activist. One might say that I'm a capitalist with a sense of patriotism or a sense of uplifting community. One might say that I'm a social entrepreneur because to a certain extent, some of my innovations, some of the products that I often come up with are not only there to uplift me as an individual, but they are there to also uplift the economy and the community that I come from. I'm mostly inspired by the philosophy that we rise by lifting others as opposed to suppressing others. So yeah, basically that is Vusi in a nutshell. I'm always working on something. I think currently I'm working on at least about 5 to 7 projects concurrently. And I think that's very little considering so many opportunities that have been presented by the pandemic, and there's so much that we can do for our communities, and there's very little people that we have. That is why some of the projects that I'm working in is so that we create a second layer, a second crop of innovators that will be able to supplement and complement the work that we are doing currently, because we are not going to be here forever. So it is just that with the knowledge that we have gathered, the little knowledge we have, we are able to pass it on. So that is me in a nutshell. I'm always raising others as I rise.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vusi. So, Mr. Bhengu, so then we'll ask you questions around it, because we saw like you are more a person who's focused more into seeing the reach of the goal in the township, which is sometimes as people who range from a township first, and we always move beyond to say like, if I might just graduate or pass my matric and go to the urban, like big cities, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and we see so much in township, there's so much things that we leave and then we go into this urban area, while other people Like I make you examples like foreigners, they own spaza shop. They make billions out of it. It's a multi-billion rent industry. We run away from such things and go. But first, before we can go deeper into such getting an understanding of the township economy, so we would like you to just give us a brief of township. It is very critical again. I think the participants to just understand the history of township, how it was formed, and then why we have this economy that is informal but that is critical and everyone is ignoring. So firstly, we would like you to take us first to say, what do you understand by township, how it was started?
Yeah, I think townships were a very interesting phenomenon. Historically, townships were mainly created to be labor reserves. In most instances, for instance, in KZN, you'd have some parts of KZN that are considered to be part of the Bantustan. Those were the rural areas. We then had black areas of villages, or which were townships closer to the urban areas that were under South Africa. And for you to be a citizen or a resident in that township, you either had to be working. If you are a male and you are working, you stay in a hostel. And if you are a male and you are married, you stay in a house in a township, in a two-bedroom house in a township. But the main requirement for you to stay in South Africa was that you must be employed. So historically, townships were created to be labor reserves. They had to serve to provide cheap labor to prove that the income that the people who stayed in townships received was not
Mm-hmm.
sufficient for them to build houses. So government had to build low-cost housing that were able to rent for as long as they are working. Once they were out of the job, they had to go back with their families to the rural areas. So
Mm-hmm.
in each and every township, you find that someone says that I'm from Wamashu, but my home is in Endweg, which is the rural area.
Mm-hmm.
Because even people themselves realized that they were disenfranchised from urban areas. They were only there to work, you see. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the historical understanding that we must have we must have about townships, that they were mainly created to provide labor. Now, the challenge now that we have in townships is that the companies that surrounded or that fed off the cheap labor from townships industrialized in the dead
Mm-hmm.
industrial revolution, and they started automating. So they started
Mm-hmm.
retrenching. If you check in the late 70s, in the 80s, companies started retrenching, but that retrenchment was only felt just after 1994, because some of the companies had to go back. They left because there was that political uncertainty, and they had to go back to their places of origin. So the townships were left as
Mm-hmm.
areas of poverty, because
Mm-hmm.
the people who were staying there were unable to sustain themselves. They could not go back to the rural areas because there's not much economic activity back home,
Mm-hmm.
and they could not sustain themselves in the townships because the factories were no longer employed. So what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Crime started being on the rise. All
Mm-hmm.
social vices, drug abuse, women abuse was on the rise. And concurrently to that was a black market when ignored market. We started having spaza shops because people were saying that it is more expensive for me to go to town to buy just one loaf of bread. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a corner house mostly where the mother or the father are state employees. They are able to purchase 10 loaves of bread in town with their VAT because they are employed by government. They come back into a shipping container. They sell those loaves of bread at a markup, which will be cheaper, would lead to a saving for the consumer. So you had now several spaza shops, mainly opened by government employees, because they were at least guaranteed their jobs were secure after the companies
Mm-hmm.
that surrounded townships left. So you
Mm-hmm.
had these government employees operating tuck shops. Currently in South Africa, you have over 120,000 tuck
Mm-hmm.
shops or spaza shops. It's a
Mm-hmm.
different debate of who owns them now. But I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
give a brief background of how we started having this informal market also running concurrently with the social vices that we have in our townships.
Mm-hmm. So your part, I like the part because it introduces now the part of now the economy, which is these people were not employed now. Then we started to see themselves now forming a survival way. And this survival way, they started now to build a township economy, which is we would like you to tell us more around to say like now, you have touched the start with the spaza shops, then things that were born again, we saw like people now started to sell fast food, like Amakunya, where you fed cakes, and we would like you to tell us more around those economy that were formed. Like we see the town tax industry again is part of this formal economy that was formed. So now we want you to get deeper now. You touch the most important thing to say like this is the what was supposed now to be like they were just staying there. They were not well taken care. And then, but then this problem of these people not working, they started to come with an innovative way for them to survive, which is they formed a new economy, which is now the formal industry. Now they started even to learn from it and going to the township. We started to see malls going to the township. So we want you to take us more into this township economy.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, South Africa is a tale of two cities, as Charles Dixon would say. You have the formal economy that is listed in the
Mm-hmm.
JSE. You have an informal economy that's almost the same size as a formal economy, but it is
Mm-hmm.
mainly decentralized. As I made an example with spaza shop here, over
Mm-hmm.
120,000 spaza shops. Collectively, their market size is around 200 billion, and that's quite huge. That's quite sizable. And because of that size, we have seen companies such as Pick and Pay, ShopRite, Spar opening their own forms of spaza shops because they were trying to capture that informal economy. But now the thing is with the informal economy is that it is mainly not rosy as everyone would say. I would imagine just because I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
200 billion, it does not mean that the people there in the townships are able to afford all these luxuries that come with running a business. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you have in one township, if you have, for instance, 20 places that sell amakuni,
Mm-hmm.
collectively they have a bargaining power of, let's say, roughly, let's say they have a collective bargaining power or buying power of 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
A rough example. Those people could be able to create their own version of KFC, sell fast food, specialties, township specialties, but they are unable to do that because they do not have that formality that comes with restaurants that we know. Secondly, they do not have
Mm-hmm.
tools that allow them to collaborate. And lastly, they treat themselves as competitors instead of seeing outside threat as a competition. You find that now Pick and Pay would open because Pick and Pay sells bread for 11 rand, and in your spaza shop you are selling bread for 15 rand. People would instead go to the tuck shop that is owned by Pick and Pay, and then you lose because Pick and Pay is able to drive down their prices because they have
Mm-hmm.
a bigger buying power. They're able to go to Tiger Brands and say we are buying bread worth 5 million per month. So give us a
Mm-hmm.
discount of 20% so that we can be able to pass it on to our consumer. So the informal economy is quite sizable. For instance, I wrote the other day that the traditional multi-market is worth about 6 billion rands, which is an equivalent of about 3% of the national budget, health budget. Yet that economy is ignored. You see, banks would not come and invest in a traditional healer in the township. They would not even give him a loan for 1,000 rand so that he goes to buy his multi. You see, but they can easily borrow a pharmacy You see, so those are some of the challenges, and part of the discussion today is that, or some of the issues that I'll be suggesting today is how do we move around issues of accessing finance, accessing credit for the informal. So yeah, it's quite sizable, it's quite big. I can mention several statistics based on the research that I've done in the past couple of months. But the informal economy is quite big if we were to formalize ourselves in the townships and rural areas. We actually create our own parallel stock exchange, as you have in America. You have the Wall Street, and you also have NASDAQ that sells shares for companies that are not listed in Wall Street. So we can be able to basically revive our economy as the informal sector. It's just that we do not have tools. We see each other as a competition instead of seeing each other as collaborators.
Hey, touch on the many ideas now, many things have changed, and one thing was before even the banks were born, stocks were already there. And then those are the kind of thing that you are saying, like, it's just simple for us to look ways to organize ourselves. We introduce the industry, but then we are not the one who enjoy the full benefit of it. And then, as you said, like now, informal is 200 billion rand, and you see like that the formal wage company, the formal economy now, they've saw that opportunity. You see them now opening, like here where I'm staying at Quarter, there's a very big retail called Vusi. So these people now, they started to put containers in the township, because now they have saw, but the way they do it in a formal way. And then one thing that why they are able now to capture it, why they are able now to manage to beat those partnerships that were already existing, is because one thing that you stated is we are not well equipped for us to make sure that we are more formalized. So as you have said, this powerful step, like now we keep the 8 billion rand, what the Parmalet, you said there was one article that you wrote where you're talking about the Parmalet. Please just take that before we even move to where now you suggest, like, if a participant now to say, like, now, how now can I help to organize our people and or build some sort of a solution that will make sure they are well organized, and then we can start to capture value around that. Yeah. So tell us more around our, quite interested around the Parmalet, how the Parmalet things work.
No, some things that we consume now in the township, we just we have always had them. For instance, sliced cheese, that individually wrapped cheese slices. I remember in the early 90s, we didn't have those. In fact, you only ate magwinya with polony,
and archer.
In archer, you see, you did not have cheese because cheese was very expensive. To consume cheese, you have to buy at least 1 kg, a huge block, and it was quite expensive. Now, Parmalat, what they did, because they realized that there's a lot of people in the township and rural areas, and that market is so big. By the way, people in townships, we have over 75% of South Africans staying in townships and rural areas. So that's quite a sizable amount of people staying in the township. So now, Parmalat wanted to introduce cheese in the township. So they started selling blocks of cheese, and they realized that people were buying them. So what they did, they started sliced cheese and then individually wrapped slices and sold them for 1 rand each. And they realized that a person is able to buy, one family can buy up to 100 slices a month. And they don't realize, because they are buying 1 rand each, 1 rand each, 1 rand each. And from that marketing campaign, they made over 1.2 billion rands. You see, from simply identifying challenges in the townships and coming up with solutions that are specific to the township. And you know what happens? After that, you had Huggies coming in, because they also started selling individually wrapped diapers. More recently, cigarette companies started promoting loose drawers, selling them individually, because they realized that some shops would not buy a 20 pack and will not sell it as a 20 pack. they would actually make more money selling it individually. So Dunhill, Marlboro, and all, they started having posters pasted outside tuck shops advertising individually sold loose drop. So, you know, the township has a lot of potential, and the big companies are realizing it, and they are creating solutions that are specific to township needs. And it is us that are always at the receiving end. We do not come up with these things. You know, imagine if before Parmalat came up with the cheese concept, if someone saw that, look, I love cheese, but it's expensive, I'll buy cheese, carry it up, wrap it individual. That person would have made from the township in Soweto, in Puchani Chaba, in Pulas, would have made 1.2 billion. But that was a lost opportunity because we do not have tools. We see the opportunity, but we do not have tools to take advantage of that opportunity. So that's one of the main challenges in our township.
You are saying like this individual, I'm laughing because I remember my aunt, she has this small shop. So I was very lucky when you were telling me to say the sugar in the packet, they take it out of the packet and put it in plastic and sell it. And people, they buy it.
They buy it.
And there was time where a flour was not available. It was only in the 10 kg. Yeah. They took the plastic, put it there, and now everyone when you go to the shop, you say like you want that flour in the plastic. You no longer want that one in the first. So those are the things that we are not realizing, but at here, that's why when I introduced to say, what we do as township people, we want to go to the urban, but we don't see now the urban is heavily investing in the township. You see the Tara Bank now. What it does, the Tara Bank? You can see they have over 2 million customers. They haven't reached the level before because they understood how the township works. Those people, they don't have opportunity, they are unbankable. But then they decided to say, okay, this person can go in a Pick and Pay and open a bank account and go.
Yes.
What you need is just you need your address, you put in the thing. So those are the kind of things as like to the participant that we want to encourage them to say like the big market is going straight to the township. So how do you start to get awakened and being aware? And we hope session like this one, those are the things that the conversation like this one, they bring that awareness to say, like, how do we start now to look for the thing, the opportunity in the township? And it goes back to this thing, which is it happened. Now you see the Western world and the East, they invest heavily in Africa. And then as you want to go to America, to go to China, why China? So those are the kind of things around the country, the problem and start to solve them. So now as you have stated these interesting things, we would like you to like what are the strategy that we can start to use to be able to capture the value in the township. Like Muti, I'm still scared like the 8 billion thing, an 8 billion rand thing. And now how do we start to realize those things? What can we say?
You know, I think the first point of departure would be we shouldn't look at townships as places that receive our charity. We shouldn't look at them as recipient. Rather, we should see them as co-creators of their own solutions. You see. The fact that you say your aunt saw an opportunity of selling flour in small packages, in selling flour in small packages, it simply means that they do see opportunities themselves and they are coming up with solutions themselves. But they simply know there's no support to scale up these opportunities. Imagine if your aunt had tools or had support. And in fact, if there was each and every township, there was an innovation hub that goes around looking for businesses that are coming up with coming up with innovative solutions and then investing in them by giving them tools. Your aunt would have been able to go directly to the source and buy now 100 kg of flour, buy a small
Mm-hmm.
machine, wrap them up, brand them with her name, and then sell them. You see, that would have been a business, and you could have replicated that model across surrounding townships, eventually the province, and eventually the whole of Africa. You see, so now we need tools that are able to work hand in hand with communities. We need hubs, innovation hubs that work hand in hand with communities and not to impose ideas or solutions from outside. Look, in the township, we are very innovative, man. Like, we are always doing something. We are always working on something. It's just that when it comes to scaling our ideas, we don't have. Look at the taxi business, for instance. You have never in a single day had that taxis are unable to work because they are broken down. All of them are broken down. In fact, if your taxi breaks down along the road, they'll be able to put you into the next coming taxi. That's collaboration, but there's no agreement. You see, that's a business. There's no agreement in paper. You see, how are they able to factor in pricing? How are they able to say that a taxi from Lamontville to town is 16 rand and they still make a profit? They're able to buy their tires, they're able to buy petrol on a daily basis, pay drivers and all, and still make a profit. How are they able to factor in those costs? You see, it's just that they don't have a formal way of saying that we arrived at this price because of 1, 2, and 3. But they are able to identify these things. In fact, most people who start taxis, they start with one. In a space of 10 years, they have 5 taxis or more. You see, but they cannot grow beyond the taxi and own airlines, for instance, because there are no tools to allow them to formalize their business, scale their business. In fact, I think if SAA was run by taxis, it would have been more profitable than it is run by violence. Put aside the violence. Put aside the
that's something like to say those people can manage to say like how like they manage to set a price to say like with 12 rand I'll pay a taxi, I'll maintain, I'll pay a driver, I'll pay him a taxi, I'll be able to feed myself, I'll be able to pay the installment and grow my taxi. Which you say whatever that you say is true. It is true. So I think to say like we see, yesterday we wrote a very powerful thought around the Lost Einstein thing, which is it was a very triggering. Before we can jump because we have touched this innovation hub thing, which is one project that we are busy with. So tell us more around that. Is like what is the disadvantage? Like based on that, not disadvantage. Just tell us around this thing of lost Einstein, this concept of like the township because they don't have support. What like how the state associating around this thing of not having the support? How many things we are losing?
Yeah, it's quite painful. It's very painful when you look at the amount of great inventions that we are losing because young people simply become discouraged. You know, when we were growing up, we built our own toys, and because our parents could not afford, we'd build a working toy, and those who were more technically savvy would have a vehicle with a motor, batteries, and all. And those people, if they were these innovation hubs that I speak of, these people have been able to build their own toys, sell them to other people, and become a huge toy factory that feeds all over the world. You see. So now the concept of lost Einsteins. There's a study that I read by the professor that you introduced me to. You remember that book, Platform Revolution? You see. So I started reading more of his work, and he wrote a very interesting concept, saying that because of inequality, we are losing great inventions. We could have had several Einsteins because it says that innovators become innovators because they come firstly from a region that has innovation And regions that he calls that innovative regions are regions that have research institutions, that have innovation hubs, that have large universities. So if someone comes from a community that's close to DUT, UKZN, they are most likely going to be exposed to innovation because these universities have their own innovation hubs, as opposed to someone who comes from MCNA. You see, they've never seen invention. That person would grow up thinking that the only opportunity that is available for them is to become a teacher, a nurse, and if they work very hard, they can become a doctor. They cannot think beyond this profession. They cannot think that I can create my own things. I can and it influence my environment. You see, I can take what others have created, combine with my own creativity, and create a new product. Imagine if, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg came from Ecuador. What are the chances that he created Facebook? The chances are very slim, you see. But he was able to create Facebook because he came from a family, a well-off family. That's one of the things the research raised, that if you come from the top 1%, you are most likely going to be an inventor. So now he comes from a well-off family. His mother is a psychiatrist, his father is a dentist. Yeah? And he then goes to a university that is well known for innovation, Harvard College. You see, so it was already predetermined that he was going to do big things. Now, as opposed to Vusi, who grew up in a very political community, became a politician, and then realized he can actually change a lot. You see, he can actually change a lot if he creates his own things, he creates his own solutions. That's one of the reasons I became a politician, because I came from a community that was very political. Would always see people marching up and down, singing political songs. Now imagine if I saw people going up and down, carrying laptops, carrying robots. I would have become an inventor at a very young age. You see, the fact that in politics, I did politics at only 11 years, and then quit politics at the age of 20 years. When I had reached plateau, I'd reached the highest, one of the highest level in politics. And then I quit because I realized this thing is not working. It's not what I want to do. And then I started very late in maybe I would have been Mark Zuckerberg, you know, by now. So that is the concept. That is the concept of that is the concept of lost Einsteins, that kids cannot become what they cannot see. And through these innovation hubs, we are exposing them. They are not education institutions. They are simply an environment that fosters the culture of innovation. You know, we buy an Arduino kit costing 1.5. We say play with it. Break it, we'll buy another one. You see, play with it. We'll break it, we'll buy another one. We don't mind. We'll raise funds. As long as you are constantly testing your ideas. If you want to build a toothbrush that brushes your tooth, that you don't even have to hold, will help you. You build it, you realize that it doesn't work, you try something else. Eventually, you'll strike gold. So that is what we are trying to do with these innovation hubs. We're trying to foster an environment of innovation. We want to bring Silicon Valley in our townships. You know, everyone who in America wants to be, in fact, all over the world, who wants to be an innovator, they simply have to go to San Francisco. Some of them are sleeping on the streets. They just want to be in that environment. They want to be inspired in that environment. And you cannot spend more than 5 years in San Francisco and not build your own products, because you are inspired on a daily basis. You are seeing people distributing flyers, inviting you to their pitch events. You are constantly inspired, and that is what we want to do in the township. We want to inspire as many people as we can. We want to expose them. Even if they decide at a later stage that they want to try something else, it's fine. But as long as we expose them to these things, it is up to them to decide that, no, this thing is not working for me.
And I like the part that, like you mentioned, so the last time, one thing that they touched was universities. You touched about research. You touched around this innovation things. And to just on top of it, like Specifically, these innovation labs, they are based in township, in garages, which mean like the garage is the gold. Other shops is a $1 billion company, and we believe that the garage is really really take out other things, which means as you say, like we are using whatever that we already have in the township that we think like they are not useful. It's part of one thing that we are doing, and then so as you say, universities are universities of students, and we see a lot of the students they come from township, and then these innovation clubs will play a very vital role as now the research, the knowledge that comes from universities, because the township cannot access the university. But university because of students, and students they come from township. So it means like now, these innovation labs it means by themselves they will come with a research thing, because students now they will be able to put whatever that they have learned at university to come into this thing. And we hope that we will see more innovation coming out of this, and they're deep in the hard township. So to the participants, if you have any question, you can type on our Q&A. If you want to ask anything, please just type, then we will just wait for your question. Any question? Okay, there it is. Do you see it, Buffo? The question?
No, there's nothing. There's no question.
Okay. Mr. Emmanuel is asking to say, dear Mr. Bhengu, you had a quite exceptional career and you continue to do this serve the people through several avenues. How do you cope with activities being part of 7+ projects? What would you consider your most valuable skills and capacity? So the question is, how do you cope with actively being part of 7+ projects, and what would you consider your most valuable skill or capacity in this?
So the question is asking, what is my skill? Or can you repeat that?
How do you like, how do you cope with if you like we are now running 7 projects projects.
So how do I yeah, so how do I handle all of them? And the second question was,
can you see them?
No,
okay,
I can't see the question.
Okay, let me read them. What are the roles of individuals to help? Chris has asked the question. So I'll read all 3 of them. The first one is like, how do you manage your capacity? And then the second question from Chris is, what are the roles of individuals to help improve? So did you get it?
Yeah, but the first question is not quite clear. What my capacity in terms of what?
So how do you cope? Like how do you manage your like let's say your time?
Oh,
like
okay.
You have
How do I
7
manage my
projects.
time? No. You know, I have kids. I have a girlfriend. I have friends. I have family. But one thing I can say is that if you genuinely want to do something, you make time for it. You see, if you are genuinely passionate about something, you are definitely going to find time for it. People make time for what is important to them. But basically, what I do, Nina, I sleep twice a day, or during lockdown. That is my new routine. I sleep during the day between 1 and 4, and then I sleep again at around 3 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. So in between that, I make time for friends where I chat with them. I make time for my kids. My kids every Sunday, everyone knows that every Sunday I'm always with my kids by the beach or somewhere. And then, yeah. So people make time for what's important, and I don't have any structured formats that I have, but I simply prioritize what's important. And I don't have time to simply meet for coffee. Everyone knows I don't meet unless we have it over a call. Whilst I'm doing something else, I would not meet you because it is not part of my the important things at that moment. Yeah.
So good, yeah. So I'll just add on top of that because we are mostly working a lot. So one thing that we're touched to say, like, in terms of you need to explain more into, there are 7 projects, but then there's a vision that they need to be alive around. So one thing that just explain to say, like, there is one thing that we call objective key results. So I think it might be a thing to say, like, they might think that this project that we are running are not related, but just explain more to say, like, now it's more on the power of 80 to 20. Do 20%, but you achieve 80%.
Yeah, and I think you have explained it. But basically, everything that I'm working on is tied to some of the objectives that we agreed with you based on the book that we read on how Google was able to grow itself to become what it is today. So basically, everything is linked. I do not take new projects unnecessarily, even though there is always a temptation on a daily basis. You read something and you see an opportunity, you think of taking it, then you realize that it does not fit with the main objectives. So you simply ignore those things. And part of being a responsible leader is having the ability to say no to yourself, to your own temptations, and being able to say no to others. You see, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll just make an example and want to say, like, what do we mean by the projects that are correlated? So let's say one project you want to design a website, or do you want to design a website? So a website by itself is a project, and on the other side, you want to give the student a work experience. By that is a project by itself. So what you do is you